going to call the meeting to order. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to join us, please stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all for coming. We have a full house tonight, but we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. So the first item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item is the consent agenda, and items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda.
Madam President, I would move approval of the consent agenda, and I would like to be recorded as voting no on item number 3.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Is everybody's things on? Okay. Okay, that brings us to our regular agenda, and there is only one item on this part of the agenda. It's the Savannah Subdivision, request for approval, annexation, and rezone. A preliminary plat and a planned unit development application consisting of 11 single-family lots, 11 townhouse lots, and 3 duplex lots to total 28 dwelling units. Just a preparatory before we get the staff report, the ACHD Commission cannot approve or deny a rezone and annexation or anything else to do with land use. All we can do is make recommendations to the City of Boise, who is the land use agency for this application, and then we will also be ruling on the preliminary plat. That is within our purview. So when we have the testimony tonight, it should not discuss any of the land use things. That will happen at the Boise City Planning and Zoning. Our staff report by Stacy Yerington will only cover the transportation elements of this application. So Stacy, if you want to go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Madam President, and good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Stacy Yerington, Development Services, and this is a decision briefing. The application before you tonight is for the Savannah Subdivision. The project is located at 4585 East Victory Road between Cloverdale Road and Eagle Road. Tonight's presentation will include a general overview of the project with trip generation information on area roads and intersections, proposed mitigation for level of service and safety concerns raised by the Commission at the January 24th meeting, and staff recommendation. This application is for annexation and rezone to RSW from RSW to R1C, a preliminary plat and planned unit development consisting of 11 single-family lots, 11 townhouse lots, and 3 duplex lots. This totals 28 dwelling units. The applicant's proposal is consistent with the City of Boise's future land use map that designates this area as compact residential. The development is estimated to generate 194 average daily trips, 19 trips in the PM peak hour. Victory Road west of Cloverdale Road and Cloverdale Road north of Victory Road are currently operating at level of service F. Eagle Road north of Victory is currently operating at 37% capacity, which is better than the acceptable level of service E. Area intersections at Victory Cloverdale Road and Victory and Eagle Road are currently operating at level of service C or better, and further north, the intersection of Overland and Cloverdale Road operates at level of service D, with the intersection of Overland and Eagle Road operating at level service E. The applicant is proposing to improve Victory Road to accommodate in order to mitigate the level of service and address safety concerns regarding traffic volume, turning movements, as well as pedestrian connectivity as identified by the Commission in the January 24th meeting. The applicant is proposing to widen both sides of Victory Road, improving it from a 2-lane road to a 3-lane road from El Rio Drive east to Fern Creek Way and tying into the right turn lane at the Victory Cloverdale intersection within existing right-of-way. So we're going west of El Rio all the way to the east and tying into this where the intersection was improved to. The widening will allow for a center turn lane and improve safety along this section of Victory Road by allowing turn and movements from the two developments to the north and from the site. The applicant is also proposing to construct sidewalk on Victory Road along the site and extending it to the east to tie into the existing sidewalk on the south side at Victory Cloverdale intersection. This improvement will provide for a pedestrian connection to the signalized intersection. These proposed improvements of pavement widening to 3 lanes will allow this section of Victory Road to operate at better than level of service E. In summary, the intersection of Cloverdale and Victory is operating at level of service E or better. The proposed mitigation to Victory Road through widening on both sides of Victory Road will improve this section to a 3-lane roadway, providing for safer turning movements and improving this section to level of service E. And by continuing the sidewalk to the east provides a pedestrian connection to a signalized intersection. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written. The applicant is here and a member of city staff is also here to speak after the applicant, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Stacy? No? Okay. Mr. Woods?
Not at this time.
Okay. Jane Suggs from the applicant will make a presentation now. You'll need only what, how long?
Less than 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
And if Stacy will put up just a landscape plan. I did not bring a whole PowerPoint because I think you're very familiar with the location. And of course, Stacy's done a great job. Good evening, not only to the commissioners, but all the interested parties that are here. I appreciate everybody being here, part of the process. I'm Jane Suggs. I'm a planner with WH Pacific, and I'm here representing Savannah Subdivision.
And your address?
My 2141 West Airport Way in Boise. Stacy, I think, did a great job. She kind of hit the highlights. I do want to recap that it's 28 dwelling units. There are 11 single-family homes, 11 townhomes that front on Victory Road, and 3 duplex lots that make 6 additional dwelling units. So we are talking about 19 PM peak trips. I know you don't get involved in the density discussion, but just bear with me for those that in the audience that might not realize that we are asking for annexation into Boise in an area that's shown in the comp plan as compact. That means 6 to 15 dwelling units per acre, and this is a 4.79 acre site. This calculates out, simple math, to 28 to 71 dwelling units on this 4.79 acre site. We are doing 28. So you can see we're at the lowest end of that comprehensive plan designation. Even the R1C zone that we're asking for, which is compatible with that area, allows 8 dwelling units to an acre or 38 dwelling units. So we're well below that, just to let you know that we're below the standard that was set by the city. I think what's important to discuss tonight, though, is all these dwelling units, they result in 19 additional peak trips in the PM time period. That's 19 trips in the current PM peak on Victory Road of 665. That's less than 3% additional trips caused by the property. And as Stacy described, we are in agreement with the conditions of approval that are outlined in the staff report. These conditions include widening the pavement on both sides of Victory Road to provide enough pavement for a center turn lane, plus constructing the sidewalk along Victory Road off-site, and that does definitely improve safety for pedestrians in the area. As you know, these improvements are actually not typical. They're a little bit more than what you might expect for a subdivision of this side to do improvements in Victory Road. But these improvements will increase the level of service to better than E, and therefore we don't need the level of service waiver any longer. In summary, I'd just like to say we agree to make the improvements in the existing Victory Road right-of-way, and that will upgrade the level of service, and we agree with all the conditions in the staff report, and very respectfully request that you approve Savannah Subdivision, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Suggs? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm going to have the City of Boise staff come up and just explain to us briefly what kind of recommendation they will be making on this application to the Planning and Zoning Commission and to the City Council.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me. Leon Letson, City of Boise Planning and Development Services. Sorry. Our recommendation is still pending on this project. Obviously, based on the outcome of this hearing, will drive a lot of what we decide to do in terms of two key findings associated with the plan unit development: undue burden on public transportation facilities and adversely affecting adjacent properties. So I think the ACHD's decision on the issue will really influence what we write for that section of our report. I won't restate the zoning or the land use designation. You've been briefed pretty well on that, but this project is supported by our development code and by the comprehensive plan in terms of the density and the layout and the nature of the project. There are several comprehensive plan policies that support the project in terms of providing a mix of housing, improving connectivity, particularly in the southwest, and annexation of properties adjacent to city limits to better coordinate future development. Everything stated by Stacy and the applicant in terms of the details of the project are accurate per what we're looking at, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Woods?
Yes, so for this project, we have Cloverdale and Victory Road, which are not in our integrated 5-year work plan. And we've received a request from the City of Boise, and I don't see any request to move these improvements up in the integrated 5-year work plan. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, that's true, yes. We've not asked for a request, or we've not requested to move those up.
And is there a reason for that from a safety perspective, from a priorities perspective?
Commissioner Woods, I would state that that's outside of current planning's purview. Particularly our comprehensive planning and transportation group are typically involved with that. We have discussed this project with them. They've not indicated any concern that way. They, as we are, again, support the improved connectivity of the new local roadways and the future connectivity through the area, but there's no answer beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes, Madam President, in your recommendations or in your ideas for this, are you planning on recommending one way or the other about parking along Victory?
We are not recommending parking along Victory. I don't believe that was a part of the proposal from the applicant. There's plenty of parking occurring internal to the development along both with on-site for the units as well as the proposed local roadways. But
The reason I ask that is because, at least in the last 3+ years that I've been sitting here, it seems like it's been notorious that smaller, higher density developments create much more parking issues than are thought to be the case.
yeah, certainly closer into the city, more compact development, the on-street parking is a very serious consideration. Out here, again, it's being provided on site and on the proposed local roadways, so we're not asking for anything on Victory.
Any other comments? Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Letson, I would just say, since there's absolutely no transit, so people do have no choice. They have to be coming in and out of this area, unlike the denser development you've referred to closer in where there's access to transit. People have that choice. They could get to and from wherever they're going via transit. This area also has very poor connectivity to start with. We're lucky to get mid-mile collector connections and virtually nothing else in between that. So isn't that really a safety issue just to start with, because it's not safe with regard both to parking and the pedestrian activity?
Well, in response to that, I would say the improved connectivity proposed by the project, particularly with the Antler Ridge developments occurring to the south and the hopefully potential to eventually connect those roadways, we see as a positive. Again, this is within the purview of ACHD in terms of roadway alignment and design and capacity. And again, we're waiting to hear from you regarding those issues to determine whether or not this project is appropriate to move forward.
You mentioned in your opening that you referred to its burden on public transportation facilities. I guess you meant a burden on car transportation facilities, because there's no public transportation available to this area, and isn't any planned as far as I can tell.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't believe there is. If there is, it's pretty far out into the future at this point, so.
Data that we, of course, have seen is those that actually do have robust transit, pedestrian, bicycle, and car facilities are safer than those that are car dependent. So we're starting with a stacked deck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So now we'll move into public testimony. I think there might be some confusion, however. This hearing is only for Savannah, which is in Southwest on Victory and the Cloverdale area. This is not about Hillsdale Estates. This is not about the Northwest neighborhood. This is not about the any project that's going to be going on to Hill Road Parkway or anything like that. We will not be taking testimony on that. That application is not before us. When it does come before us, then of course we'll take testimony on that. So I know some people have signed up to testify on those items, and we will not be taking testimony on that. We've received a number of emails regarding this. Rest assured, we have read them all, so you don't need to read them into the record. They are already into the record. Please limit your discussion to the transportation issues, and you'll have 3 minutes. You can come up, give your name and address for the record. And then if you haven't signed up to testify, but at the end you wish to testify, then you most certainly will be able to do that at that point. So we'll just go through the list of those who have testified or signed up to testify on the Savannah subdivision, and then we'll go from there. So first up will be Marisa Keith. So if you'd come up, give your name and address for the record, and when you begin, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. My name is Marisa Keith. I live at 3279 South Cloverdale, which is just directly south of this yellow area here. And I do have some slides. I did write a very long letter, so I hope that you got all of my points on that. My purpose here tonight is to urge you to continue to deny the Savannah project, given the safety issues already in place and the added public safety issues that this development will bring. I've been doing some research, and this slide shows the LOS waivers from about 2014, and the ones in yellow are near Savannah. LOS waivers have added 682 peak hour trips to our area, 6,661 in total. These roads are over the acceptable level of service. And as you can see where these roads are, Cloverdale, Cloverdale, Victory, Cloverdale, Cloverdale, Victory, Cloverdale, Cloverdale, Cloverdale south of Overland. It should be noted that Corey Barton also received 2 of these waivers for Pepper Mills Estates and Diamante. There is a statement on the staff report under the conclusions of law, and I'm going to paraphrase because it says it will not place an undue burden on existing vehicular transportation systems within the area of Savannah. And I don't see how adding 682 peak PM trips and over 6,000 other trips on roads that are already at a level F does not cause a burden on existing vehicular transportation systems. According to the staff report, the Savannah project will only add 19 more peak trips. But when you look at this, which one of those is the straw that breaks the camel's back? What about the next project after that and the next project after that? These numbers are particularly troubling. Can I get the next slide? Oh, okay. These projects are particularly troubling to me when compared to the next slide, which shows statements taken from staff reports based on the capital improvement plan. You can see the timeline for road improvements that have been pushed back, starting in 2012, Cloverdale's to be widened in 2017-21. It continues to get pushed out, and pushed out. I think these push-outs are probably because of budget issues. However, the CIP timelines referenced in the staff report seem to have been used for justification for recommendations and granting of waivers. If these timelines are not consistently met, it would seem to make sense to not rely on them for validation when approving subdivisions on streets that are already over an acceptable level of service. This erodes the public's confidence in ACHD, and at this point, I don't believe that even the most current estimates for road improvement can be relied upon to be accurate. This next slide addresses the projects that Jane Suggs brought up in her meeting. If I can have just a few more seconds. most of these subdivisions access Cloverdale, which is supposed to be widened before Victory. Nob Hill is not within the area of Savannah. Muirwood's LOS waiver was not even requested, even though these people access Cloverdale. And it seems like this was a staff level approval and did not come before the commissioners. And then we have Knightsbridge, which is also known as Sutherland Farms. At that time, the LOS tables were different, and Victory was rated as better than E. Also, the City of Meridian Comprehensive Plan called for medium density in this area, and the applicant proposed a low density, as opposed to Savannah, which is going from a rural RSW to RC-1 or R-1C. This subdivision also has more than one exit to their location. So that is all I have for you, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Michael Keith?
Keep that slideshow up. There's some slides on the next one. Thank you. Appreciate that. I could get to the slide I want really quick. Okay, well, Madam President, Commissioners, thank you very much for letting us speak again. I appreciate being in front of you. Unfortunately, I wish it was more positive, but you guys have a tough job.
Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll get there. Michael Keith, we live at 3279 South Cloverdale Road. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Savannah project. I too would like to see this get turned down, and we've talked about the LLS waivers. I want to focus on connectivity that's been brought up a couple different times with this project. This project is going to be only 900 feet away from an intersection that's going to get busier, that has not already had the impact of the waivers that have been provided on these roadways to date. You've got the Muirwoods subdivision that enters this area. You're going to have the Savannah subdivision. If you approve it, you've got 2 private drives and another driveway, all within about 1,000 feet to have to get in and out of here. I understand that they're going to put a center lane in here, but we all know that as traffic backs up, that center lane will just be used to get to that turn lane. It's going to be dangerous getting in and out of there. And when you look past that, the future connectivity, which we talked about before, the property to the east is owned by N&U. There may never be connectivity from that. The property to the west is owned by my father-in-law. I own the property to the south of that. It's very possible that that becomes a family estate and that never gets developed. This project can be dabs right smack in the middle of continuing roadways that are going to continue to be strained, and they may never get future connectivity out of this. And it may only become more dangerous. And a project that may get widened in 8 to 12 years, maybe, again, if you guys have the funding to do it, it seems like that this is not the time for this project. In my purview, that saying no doesn't mean never. It just means not right now, not with the conditions that are currently at stake right here, not with being able to say maybe in the future this gets better. I would like to see this remain the density it's at, and if the developer wants to develop at that density with a couple of houses getting out of there, great. But at this kind of density, this close to an intersection with that much going on, just doesn't seem safe. And with a single road issue, if there were to be, this is our property. There was an accident in front of it just a month ago. One road in and out. You can see that the fire truck and the ambulance block that. These houses are getting closer together, they're fields. We've already had a fire just about a decade ago that hit a field, lit houses on fire, burned more than 10 houses in that property. Fire trucks on busy roads can't get there. Safety becomes an issue. You cannot get out of it. There's no other access out of this property. If that gets blocked like that and there's a fire with houses as close as they are and they start to light on fire, how are people supposed to get out? I kind of leave you with that. I hope that we've been respectful with our comments, but I hope you will take them in consideration of turning this project down. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. Okay, Susie Steiner.
My name is Susie Steiner. We live at 3145 South El Rio. The last slide that you saw a moment ago, where it says the widening will end, that's in the middle of my property, which makes it a very unsafe spot for my house. Right now, it is 2 lanes. One of the things that we have wanted to do, we bought the house about a year ago, is to put a driveway in off of Victory, which has been, we've spoken with planning and zoning, and they are fine with it. We haven't gone through the process to, to do it yet and find the funds to do so. But with the widening, or the possible widening, there's no way that I can put a driveway. The road will end in my driveway, and then we have people running into my fence and my driveway. The other question that I have, what happens to the drainage? Where does the stormwater go? Right now, after the rainstorm that we had a few days ago, as well as the snowstorm, there is water for 2 and 3 days in the borrow pit right next to my house. This is to be, asphalted over. Where does the water go? Then my other question my husband asked is that, would this be a consideration if Victory were already 5 lanes? Would you put a single street stubbing onto Victory with that many more cars? There isn't a place to put a way out. So please, don't vote for this one. Not now. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the question on drainage, we will have that asked, and then staff or the applicant will address that at the end of the
Thank you.
testimony. Okay. Patricia Suit. Was I close?
Right on.
Good.
You'd be amazed. My name is Patricia Suit. I live at 4755 East Victory Road in Meridian. I live on the 10 acres east adjacent to the proposed subdivision. I've lived there for 25 years, and it is owned by NNU. I have a life estate. I can't get out. I cannot make a left turn onto Victory Road. I've watched the traffic grow and grow and grow. It is stopped in the mornings and in the evening. I just tried to get out of my driveway to come here. I couldn't make a left-hand turn because it's just no way. There's too much traffic. So I have to make a right-hand turn, try to get into the left-hand lane, go up Cloverdale. My biggest concern about this is that this double line that they're going to put in the turn lane, it's going to go, what I see now is I see cars trying to get to that turn lane. What's going to happen is they'll come down, they'll see that nice big lane, and they'll pull into that and then get to the left-hand turn lane. My biggest concern is in the evenings. What will happen if there's a car coming out of Muir Woods coming this way? Cars going into Savannah that way. It's going to be like this. It's going to be head on. Who's going to get out first? And people aren't very nice about letting you get into the line of traffic these days. I mean, I can sit there and God bless every car that goes by that won't let me in. And I've seen it grow and grow and grow. And that is my concern, is that I see cars going down Victory now that pass school buses when they're stopped because they don't have the patience. It's a patient thing. But this is a danger. And I pray there won't be a head-on, but I just have a feeling there will be, because people are in a hurry at night to get up to that left turn lane. People are going to be in a hurry to get into Savannah, and they're going to be like this. Who's going to get out first? Flip a coin? To me, it is really a safety thing. I fear for it, and I do fear for people getting out. They're going to have a sign onto the property that I live on, future development. Well, I spoke to the president of NNU, I had lunch with him 2 weeks ago. I don't know what future development they're talking about, but it's going to be way in the future. And hopefully I'll be there another 20 years, so it's going to be at least 20 years before it gets to anything else. And I do resent having that sign there because it's not true. And if there is a fire, how are people going to get out? They can't go into my property because I have a ditch that runs through it. They couldn't get their car over the ditch to get to the gate onto the Cloverdale. So to me, it's just an accident looking to happen. And I sincerely hope that you will not, that you will agree that it is a safety hazard and that you will vote against this kind of amount of traffic trying to get out on Victory Road in the mornings and then again at night. Thank you very much.
And I bet when you say God bless, you really don't mean God bless.
You know, no, but it's better than what I used to say.
Okay. Floyd Smith?
My name's Floyd Smith. I live at 3065 South Cloverdale Road. I've lived in Boise my whole life. I remember when Overland Road was a 2-lane gravel thoroughfare. Over the years, I've seen Boise grow, and I've decided to live here the rest of my life. As I've listened to the discussions that have gone on here over the last couple of months, a couple of things come to my mind. Policies and procedures. They are sound rules to guide decisions to the benefit and safety required by society. Fundamental truth. Waivers are an exception to the normal rules. The policies and procedures establish a legal bar for the security of those making decisions. My question here is, who holds the responsibility for damages due to a waiver that moves outside the normal policy, if indeed there is a responsibility to be held for that, whether legal or personally moral? My concern here is that the request for waivers, as in this situation, seek to make the waivers the norm. And they may be used as a malice of heart threat if not granted. Who is going to shoulder the responsibility of consequences if the original policies are not upheld and significant damage to property or persons results? This august body, or Corey Barton, or the individuals that incur that damage if it does? And how long must that responsibility be held by those individuals? I'm a retired arborist. For the years that I prune trees, I'm held 7 years for each pruning to maintain the safety requirements for that tree not to fall on a house or to kill somebody when it falls over. I shoulder that responsibility, and it brought into clear focus the consequences of my responsibility to follow established policy to protect myself and those individuals that I made professional decisions for. I desire that the decisions of this board protect, in their August responsibilities, toward a city that is now considered to be one of the fastest growing in the country. The long-term consequences of small mistakes and errors are going to result in property damage, loss of life, and perhaps emergency vehicles not being able to get where they need to be at the time that they need it. It is my opinion that if these waivers are granted for the inception of this project, if Corey Barton is allowed to continue on, that more subsequent waivers are going to be requested, and therefore putting a burden of responsibility on somebody that hopefully makes a good decision. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, the improvements that Corey Barton will be doing to Victory Road, the widening to 3 lanes, the sidewalk on the south side, that does not require a waiver to do that. That takes away the necessity for a waiver. So it will have level of service, appropriate level of service, once those improvements are done, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, Richard Llewellyn. And this is about Savannah,
Thank you.
right? Your testimony?
It's
Yes, Richard Llewellyn, 9170 Hill Road. Yes, President Baker and Commissioners, it is about Savannah. It is in support of Savannah as well as yourselves. It is also addressing the larger issue of policy waivers.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is about Savannah.
That's right. President Baker and Commissioners, I would like to thank ACHD Commissioners for recently upholding district policy when considering the Savannah subdivision proposal. We, as Ada County residents, should understand that ACHD does not make the underlying decisions that generate traffic. Rather, it is the zoning authorities, and in this case, Boise, that create the densities that in turn create traffic. However, when road capacity is exceeded, safety is compromised, and we all should have a right to safe roads. We understand that in the past, waivers to District Policy 7601.4.1 level of service standards have been granted by our commissioners. For example, for the South Park subdivision on South Cloverdale Road, reviewed in 2013 and near the new Savannah proposal, staff recommended and commissioners granted a waiver to this policy. But in that case, current economic conditions were cited as the rationale for the waiver. Indeed, the Treasure Valley was still struggling to come out of the Great Recession. Now, however, we are clearly booming. Boise is cited among the fastest growing cities in one of the fastest growing states. But the requests for waivers to level of service standards continue, though the rationale for granting them is different. I quote from the Savannah report, and perhaps this is an earlier version. This waiver is consistent with other preliminary plats in the area that have been approved by ACHD. In other words, the justification for granting waivers today is primarily that they have been granted in the past. I ask that commissioners continue to uphold District Policy 7601.4.1 level of service standards, as well as district local street intersection spacing on a minor arterial policy as it applies to the proposed Savannah subdivision. It is never easy to return to enforcing policy once exceptions have been made. It is, however, imperative to do so both for sound governance, safe roads, and good fiscal policy. And there is never a better time to return to policy, which may require addressing the need for additional funds for improvements to bring our roads to acceptable levels of service before development occurs, and during a time of rapid economic growth. We understand that it will not be popular among all parties, but the only time harder than addressing this issue today will be next month, next year, or in the next decade. The alternative is to create both roadway hazards and moral hazard as developers continue to expect waivers to policy as the rule rather than the exception. There are a number of people in the audience this evening that have decided not to take your time by testifying, but to support this statement. I would like to ask President Baker for permission to ask those in support of upholding district policy to ensure safe roads and in support of commissioners that do so to stand. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you, President Baker and commissioners.
Thank you. Again, with the improvements the developer is making, there will be no waiver necessary.
That's great. And does that include the local street intersection spacing on a minor arterial policy?
It includes the level of service
Okay.
on Victory Road.
Okay. And then on Cloverdale, is that just outside of the, okay, thank you very much.
Amy Bryant.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Amy Bryant. I have lived at 4461 East Victory Road in Meridian, immediately west of the yellow area, since 2002. I'm a longtime Boise native from 1979, and I have seen firsthand the opportunities and challenges that have presented themselves with Boise's remarkable growth. I am a horsewoman. I am an organic gardener. I raise bees, and I have grandchildren. And I just wanted to provide that information so that you know I'm a human being. I also recognize your time is valuable, and I recognize other people wish to speak, and I am in agreement with the comments thus far. So for expediency's sake, I hope to be permitted to read my statement. That way it will go quicker. I spoke in opposition to the planned development at the January 24th ACHD public meeting, at which commissioners voted unanimously to deny the builder the waivers required for the process to move forward. I attended the ACHD meeting in which commissioners voted 3-2 to hear the builder's appeal at their March 28th meeting, this meeting. The basis for reconsidering their decision was new information that the builder suggested would be provided. I have read with interest the builder's modification plan as well as the current ACHD staff report. In my view, the proposed modifications not only fail to address prior safety and traffic concerns, including, as others have already mentioned, a tenable plan for future connectivity of this subdivision, but they also, the modifications, in my view, also create new ones. The new plan includes a limited widening of the impacted portion of Victory Road to 3 lanes with a shared center turn lane. The developer suggests that this modification will resolve prior level of service concerns raised by the impacted residents and commissioners alike. Whether the proposed widening will significantly improve Victory Road's hourly vehicle capacity in the short and long term, that's debatable. Instead, the proposed new shared center turn lane holds significant potential for increasing the number of vehicle conflict points. This is for 2 reasons. First, it is common knowledge that anxious or impatient drivers will invariably use a shared center turn lane as a through lane. This would likely occur at the same time residents seeking access to Victory Road from existing roads, El Rio and Fern Way, and the proposed Savannah Subdivision will utilize this lane for subdivision access. Thus, drivers will face increased potential for serious vehicle conflicts over short distances. This problem is further exacerbated by the close proximity of the Victory-Cloverdale intersection, by daily and weekly stops of school buses, mail delivery vehicles, trash collections, etc. District policy clearly outlines the rationale and requirements for the location, spacing, and control of access points to the arterial system, and they're put in place to separate and reduce potential vehicle conflicts. And I suggest that ACHD consider these facts when denying this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Visser. Commissioner.
Thank you, President Baker. I'm Rick Visser. I reside in...
Want to raise the mic?
I guess so. Thank you.
Pretty tall.
Yes, I'm Rick Visser. I reside on Route 20 in Boise, Idaho, 83713. President Baker and members of this committee, I come to you tonight and ask you to oppose this project based on 2 grounds. First, the developer, Corey Barton, put in a medium density development which was below Boise's density rating, and it was near my neighborhood. This development was approved by ACHD in 2012 with a condition and a commitment by Corey Barton to make road improvements. However, 6 years later, this very development still has its main entrance and exit onto only 2 lanes, which is located on North Cloverdale, approximately 1/10 of a mile south of Ustick. Is this a problem? Is this a safety problem? I firmly believe that it is a serious safety problem. I have seen many afternoons where traffic has backed up and extended to the north side of the Ustick intersection. Having a road with only 2 lanes, if one person attempts to turn left and incoming traffic blocks that turn, it ties it up, it backs it up. I have not seen an emergency vehicle there, but if they were there, they'd have to literally drive on the sidewalk on one side. The other reason why I oppose this measure and ask you to do so also is that I represent 1/3 of the Ada County Commissioners, but I represent 450,000 Ada County residents. I represent all of the residents in Ada County. And what is the trend? Can we gauge the trend of what our constituents are feeling? I believe we can. 2 weeks ago, Boise State presented the results of a survey that they took. It's called the Second Annual Treasure Valley Survey. It's on their website, and you can receive a copy either electronically or mailed out to you. One question on the survey that particularly drew my attention was, do you believe that Boise is growing too fast? The number of respondents that answered yes was 55%. That was an increase of 10% from the prior year, where 45% of the respondents answered in the affirmative. 55%. What about the others that took this survey? 15% were undecided at this time. May I indulge you for a few more seconds?
Sure.
So we have 55% saying that Boise is growing too fast, 10% saying that they're undecided, or 15% saying that they're undecided, and 30% saying they're okay with Boise's growth rate. That means today, by a margin of 2-1, our constituents, who we represent, are saying that we are growing too fast. I urge you to take these 2 points into consideration when you make your decision on this development, and I urge you to oppose it. Thank you.
Just Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you. Commissioner Visser, I just had a question about the name of that subdivision that you were referring to that was approved and then 6 years later.
Yeah. You know, I have 100 subdivisions in my mind right now, but that's one I'm sorry I can't come up with.
Okay.
I can certainly get it and email it to you, Commissioner Arnold.
Yeah, I'm just curious what street that is that.
Well, right on the corner of Eustic and North Cloverdale is the new Maverick. They moved across the street. They were on the north side of Eustic. That building is still there. You have that. And then you had a development that was put in there quite small. It's right next door to Cloverdale Nursery. 2 lanes are only exist right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Visser, that's only been under construction for,
It's been occupied, I believe, for 9 months now.
it hasn't been very long. Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you, ACHD committee.
Jane Gabbert.
Good evening. My name is Jane Gabbard. I live at 11426 West Tioga, but I've owned a property at 11420 West Victory for 25 years. I've just downsized. But now access to my property is on a cul-de-sac with great big homes on little tiny lots. And this is a proper cul-de-sac. And people are parking on the street because their garages are full of belongings, and these houses are so big that lots of people live in them, and they have cars, and there's not enough off-street parking. And this is a proper cul-de-sac where I live. What's proposed here is going to have people parking on the street. I fear. I mean, I'm reasonably certain of it. And then, with cars parking on the street, we've got 3 types of garbage cans now that we put out. 3 types of garbage trucks are coming down that narrow street with potential cars parked there, and no cul-de-sac, no turnaround for these big trucks. Not to mention any emergency vehicles that are just going to have a real problem. It's been addressed before. So those are my concerns with the development itself, and I'm in total agreement with the concerns of the intersection itself. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Denis Stebbins.
Well, thank you very much for the the opportunity to discuss with you. My name is Denis Stebbins, and I reside at 4461 East Victory Road. I'm a physician at the Boise VA Medical Center and have taken care of veterans for 40 years. My property is immediately adjacent to the proposed development. I've resided at this address for 20 years and have grown winter wheat, spring wheat, oats, alfalfa, honeybees, and have continuously had horses, cattle, or sheep on the property. As we all know, Victory Road between Cloverdale and Eagle is a two-lane country road, and most of the houses on either side have private lanes that simply empty onto Victory Road. There are no street lights, there are no sidewalks, and thus children walk in the ditches to reach designated school bus stops, and most of the mornings throughout the school year, this is in the dark. One school bus stop is directly across Victory from my property, and one is in the ditch next to my pole fence. There's been a dramatic increase in traffic over the past few years, and when the buses stop, traffic is backed up, sometimes totaling 20 cars on either side of the road. So although you are aware of flow in Victory, there are times when it becomes absolutely congested. And one of the times is during the school year with school buses. The other time is on Tuesday mornings. There's pickup of recycling property materials directly on Victory Road, because most of the people's driveways directly dump onto Victory. And so when that happens, there's also 20 cars or so that are backed up going from house to house to house behind those vehicles. In the past 2 years, one car and one pickup and trailer have driven off the road and through my fence and into my pasture. One of them was a very exciting high-speed chase by the Ada County Sheriff. So the proposed subdivision is surrounded by single-family dwellings on 5 to 10 acres, and it has only one entrance, and that is onto Victory Road. They proposed 2 exits in the development, one which would empty into my alfalfa field to the west, and one which would empty into a 10-acre pasture to the east. The latter would have to empty onto Victory Road, and that entrance onto Victory Road would be dangerously close to the intersection of Cloverdale and Victory Roads. If they went through my property, it would also empty onto Victory Road, so that doesn't solve any traffic problems whatsoever. And my property obviously is not going to be developed, and it will stay as agricultural land forever. We're grateful for the opportunity to discuss our points of view directly with you. Your job is a tough one, especially now with all the development, and the concerns of property owners and taxpayers are difficult for you to balance without the demand of developers. While most of us would prefer this land to remain agricultural and open, we must concentrate on those responsibilities given ACHD to provide sufficient roads, control traffic, and provide safety to the citizens of Ada County and our neighbors. Granting permission for this is the wrong thing to do for many of the reasons that I talked about. Please do not approve this plan, and please do not provide waivers in the future for public safety for this particular Savannah subdivision, which in my estimation is poorly designed, high-density development in an agricultural area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Arnold has a question.
Yes, Dr. Stephens, you indicated that your property will remain agricultural forever. I just wondered, have you recorded a deed restriction that assures that it will remain agricultural in perpetuity?
No.
No. Okay.
But if you want, I'd be glad to do that. But I happen to have a daughter and a son-in-law and 3 grandsons that live right next door to me, and I suspect that they will probably receive that property in the future for several generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Phil Van Sickle.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Phil Vance. I'm president of South Cole Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to support this tonight because what happens along Victory and Cloverdale Road affects the traffic in my community, and I frequently have to travel in that area. Now, I live at 6228 South Latigo Drive, 83709 for the record. There's no dispute that Boise is one of the fastest growing communities in the country. And with growth comes the responsibility of building the appropriate infrastructure to handle the additional traffic load. Now, I don't live in the past, neither should ACHD. Waivers may have been acceptable in the past, and now is the time when those waivers are no longer acceptable. In fact, why have standards at all? Why waste time if we're going to continue to grant waivers? Now, the developer's proposal seems to do the absolute minimum to address these requirements. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She goes to school. If she was getting an F in a class, there's no grade called E. And I wouldn't allow her to do the absolute minimum to meet the requirements. You bet I wouldn't. Neither should you. 5, 8, maybe 12 years before improvements? How about exploring what can be done to move those major improvements up on the agenda and then reconsidering this development? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that's all that has signed up to testify. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the commission? Come on up. Give your name and address.
Hello, my name is Ina Patrick, and I'm the lead of Holy Land Drive neighborhood. I've resided in Idaho for 20 years now.
What's your address?
My address is 6850 Holy Land Drive, Boise 83709. Now that there is a construction going on Lake Hazel and South Cole, I have to drive every day. I have to take Victory Road or Cloverdale Road to take my kids to school and back. And Victory Road, of course, it's always busy. There are always crashes on it, and there is always road work. I mean, every week there is a lane closure, another big sign saying it's going to be closed completely. It's like absolutely amazing. So I really think that the pace of development is already irresponsible. I mean, if this is not just about CBH property rights for this parcel, because his impact is not within the parcel. It actually impacts all of us. And it's not the only parcel he's trying to develop. There are CBH developments everywhere. It's like absolutely maddening because there is a road work everywhere too. And while there was road work on Cloverdale Road, I saw a bicyclist hit by a car, and he was like dead or something on the road. So there's also safety issues that come up with it, with this pace of development. And I think that the pace of development is not just #1 in the country. I think it's actually irresponsible because it shifts a burden to the residents. We are paying for the roads, we are paying for the new school bonds, while the city and CBH build a higher density subdivisions. And I think it's strange coincidence that Corey Barton and City of Boise share initials. So from now on, first of all, I would like to ask you to stick to ACHD policy because the developer argued before you that an exception to the policy has now become a policy because you've always been granting the waivers. And it's like an oxymoron. And an exception to the policy is not a policy. And, if we're not going to have policies, then why have a CHD? Maybe we can just rely on Corey Barton and he can decide everything for us. So Anyway, I urge you today to deny Savannah Subdivision and to adhere to your policies as written and not as recommended by ACHD staff. And I hope that by you, the government, engaging with the public more, the balance in growth can be restored. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I will, oh, Betty, come on.
Short. Commissioners, I'd like to ask a favor. I have a friend that is has a very heavy European accent and asked if I would read a letter for him. So could I start with that and then read mine, if that's
Sure.
okay.
What's your address, though?
Okay, Betty Berman Solo at 1970 Cananero Way, Boise, Idaho. And this letter is from Marcus Elphus, and 1970 Cananero as well. So, dear members of ACHD, I have seen many developments and road construction happening in the Treasure Valley. I was always wondering why nobody ever thought about infrastructure first. It wasn't a problem until Boise and surrounding development grew exponentially. Now we are at a tipping point where infrastructure has to come first. Make developers pay for the extras they want. Make them pay in full now and not in payments so you keep up with the needed infrastructure. If ACHD is running out of money to fund projects, permits should be delayed until funds are available. If developers think that they can make the big money, they can spend it as well. Why have the public pay for it and suffer? I am also the kind of person that would rather spend a few bucks more to get something done for the long run instead of saving a few bucks and just get it done quick and have to rework it in a couple of years. I'd rather delay another project because I'm short on money, since I did my last project for the long term. Rather than doing everything quick and redo it at once, I am done with my previous project, meaning going in circles and wasting money. There is still time to fix what went wrong during the rush time in previous years. Once the valley is completely built up, it will be impossible to fix the mistakes that have been made. I would like my taxes and fees I'm paying used wisely, not just blown out for a temporary fix. I also know that all the money that can be made is not always worth the hassle and inconvenience that might be put on other people afterwards. So I'm urging you to be careful about handing out freebies others have to pay for later. Fix it now or never, and Boise won't be a livable place anymore. Thank you. Sincerely, Marcus Elphus. English is not his first language, but he felt very passionate about having me read that for you, so appreciate that. I would like to thank the commissioners again for considering something that's very, very serious to our neighborhood. In Ada County, ACHD is the only recognized authority for upholding transportation policies designed for well-planned and safe development. The Southwest Ada County Alliance urges the Ada County Commissioners to deny the Savannah project based on this fact and the following concerns, regardless of required mitigation. Number one, District Policy 7205.4.3 states that, in quotes, new local streets should not intersect arterials, close quotes. Local streets should intersect collectors. This proposal requests that Green Forest Way, a local street, would intersect Victory Road, a minor arterial, requiring an exception. It may not be a waiver, but it's an exception of 7205.4.3. Number two, this same policy states that local streets not intersect minor arterials closer than 660 feet. This proposal, as you've heard, has Green Forest Way intersecting Victory Road 356 feet from existing Fern Creek Way and 350 feet from existing El Rio Drive. In other words, this proposal in itself requests 2 exceptions for the same policy. Might not be called a waiver, but it's an exception. And it undermines the policy. Number 3, level of service F on Cloverdale Road is currently unacceptable on Cloverdale Road at 680 VPH. LOSE, if it was acceptable, is 575. Okay, that's over 100 right now that make it unacceptable. No improvement is planned for Cloverdale Road from Victory to Overland with this project. But we know, we're sure, that this project, that number will certainly increase greatly as people head north on Cloverdale from the Victory intersection. My thesaurus defines unacceptable as unsatisfactory, unwelcome, objectionable, unsuitable, and undesirable. Again, Cloverdale Road will remain LOSF, unacceptable, regardless of planned mitigation on Victory Road. The Southwest Ada County Alliance asks that safety for existing Ada County residents be the #1 priority and that existing policies be enforced without exceptions or waivers. Finally, the Southwest Ada County Alliance asks that ACHD require a detached sidewalk be placed along Victory Road to establish a safer pedestrian corridor whenever development occurs on critical arterials. So we are urging you to deny this request on the appeal. And at the same time, I'd like to say to Commissioner Hanson, I agree wholeheartedly that it is definitely unsafe to have the level of density requested by the city when we have no alternative transportation that is recommended for these major arterials. So for that reason alone, I think that we have a density that is being requested at this location that is far beyond inclusive for alternative traffic improvements that should be in place at this point. So I urge you again to deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, I'm going to let the applicant come up and respond to some of the questions. There was one about drainage. There's one about when the road improvements will be done. And I guess where's the sidewalk going to be on the south side of Victory?
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, Jane Suggs at WH Pacific, and I'm representing Savannah Subdivision. I appreciate everybody being here. This is pretty awesome because I'm kind of a policy, well, I'm kind of the process nerd. So I like to know that people are here speaking their minds. So let's talk about a few of those things. First, in my list was parking. There was some concern about parking. Each of the homes in the subdivision will have a 2-car garage. And there is, of course, aprons in front of the garages, so there's plenty of room for parking like in any other subdivision, and there's on-street parking, which happens in my subdivision when people come visit. They either park in my driveway or they park in front of my house. There's plenty of room for that in this area. Want to talk a little bit about the ditch. Yes, we are going to be widening, but we will not be widening to the point where we will get rid of the drainage. We can't do that. So according to our engineer who's taken a look at the widening, we can widen within the right-of-way, and we can widen so that the ditch doesn't get covered over and will still carry the stormwater. So, and we haven't, because we haven't been approved, we don't have detailed engineering plans, but we will be making sure that this drainage remains. So if there's where the borrow ditches are will remain or be moved back. So they'll be fine. let's see, again, just reinforcing something you've already said, Commissioner Baker, President Baker, is that we no longer need a waiver on Victory Road because of the improvements that we're doing in front to create the center turn lane. So that changes when you look at the chart in your level of service charts. We are better than E. A lot of talk about connectivity, and one of the things that both ACHD and the city require are connections to properties, whether they're developed or not. So we are showing stub streets to the east and the west. Our original plat showed a stub street to the south. ACHD staff has recommended that instead of the south, we stub to the east and the west. I too have talked to the outreach person at NNU and know that there is a life estate there, but they expect that sometime in the future that property will be developed. So we want to make sure that we have a street stubbed there. There were some concerns about just, other projects where road improvements haven't been made. You have control over that with the final plat. You get to sign the final plat. So if there are conditions of approval that have to be met, we have to do those improvements before you sign the final plat, which means for the audience that doesn't understand, there's still a lot of process that's remaining here. We have to actually do the work, then survey it, and then we have to get you to sign off on a plat before we can actually sell a lot. So there are lots of opportunities there for there to be conditions to make sure that things get done in a timely manner. Also, there was a concern about whether or not this needs to be an agricultural area. It is in the area of impact of the city of Boise. It is in their comprehensive plan as a compact area. So we are meeting all the requirements of the city. This is not an agricultural area according to the city of Boise, and it is in their comprehensive plan. Let's talk a little bit about, there was some concerns about parking on the street and garbage cans, and those stub streets that go to east and west do provide adequate turnaround. In fact, the fire department will look at that and make sure that there is adequate turnaround. It's not like a huge cul-de-sac, but it does provide the hammerhead type turnaround that they can use. So there's plenty of room for emergency vehicles. They'll be able to turn around. Garbage trucks can come down and turn around as well. There was some discussion about kids are walking in the ditches, which I think is really not a good thing. So of course we will put sidewalk in front of our property as is required for all developments along Victory Road. That will be set back close to the new right-of-way. We're dedicating right-of-way, so it'll be back against the right-of-way. So eventually, when Victory Road does become a 5-lane road, which it will be at some time in the future, it will likely be space there. It could be detached there, but certainly during the interim, there will be pavement, there will be gravel, and then there'll be a sidewalk. The sidewalk won't be right up against the pavement. So kids will be able to walk. We're extending that sidewalk to the east along the south side of Victory Road. So kids will be able to walk to the intersection on the south side. There was, let's see, someone commented that we were doing the minimum, and I have to say, I've worked in this business for a long time, and it's not the minimum for a developer to actually go out and do improvements in the right-of-way, widen the pavement that's not in front of them, but to the north of them and to the east of them. I mean, this is the type of work that's being done to actually improve the entire level of service for that section of Victory Road. And I think it will provide an opportunity if cars are wanting to come down Victory Road, they're coming home down Victory Road and they want to turn left into the Savannah Subdivision, there won't be cars backing up. There will be people, they'll get into the left turn lane, so they can do that. So that would be different from other places where if we did not have the turn lane. There were some comments about Cloverdale Road. Again, Cloverdale Road, not all the traffic that comes out of Savannah will go on Victory and up Cloverdale Road. So Cloverdale Road is sort of, it is at a lower level of service, but it's not adjacent to our property. Again, detached sidewalks. And let's talk, I'd love transit out there. I think it would be great, but transit doesn't come without density. I mean, you know that. So it's not that somebody's going to say, oh, well, there's a possibility of some houses out there, let's run some buses. We don't do that. We have to build some density before the buses will come. And I do appreciate that. So we've talked parking, connectivity, the ditch, This is not a minimum improvement in the right-of-way that we're doing. It is changing the level of service, which was the big concern about the waiver. It is in the area of impact. And also, I understand policy, and I understand that there are written policies, but it's a good thing we have you here, because you get to look at each individual project to determine if that policy is absolutely necessary in this case. In this case, we see a policy, and we are working with the staff and with you to make changes so that we meet the policy, and that's the level of service policy. So I can answer questions. Let me know if I missed something.
I think you hit it all. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, for Stacy. What is the traffic count going to need to be on Victory before medians are required over to the Cloverdale intersection?
President Baker, Commissioner, we would look at medians would be required when they're warranted. If we saw so many turning movement accidents, we don't necessarily base it on the number of trips. It's usually based on accidents. Or when we improve an intersection that limits the right-of-way or right in and right out. Right now, we're not affecting, if we put in a median, we would actually be affecting the NU property as well, which is outside of this development.
So what I'm hearing then is that it's possible that there will be a median in that center turn lanes sometime in the future, perhaps even before it's 5 lanes.
It could if it's warranted through accidents or some other movement.
Okay.
I just don't think that's a real possibility.
Okay.
It's not with this this application, right?
How long will the northbound turn lane be when you're going east on Victory? The length of the turn lane.
John,
President Baker, Commission, John Kurt, Deputy Director of Engineering for the district. Those are design considerations that we'll look at when we're looking at the volume of the traffic, the roadway segment, the turning movements, and what turn pocket needs to be installed based on that capacity.
Okay. What concern is there on the part of staff that the center lane might actually be used as a through lane since it's so close to the intersection?
President Baker, Commissioners, I currently don't have any concern.
Okay.
Won't it be striped as a, excuse me, please. We didn't laugh when you guys were speaking. Won't it be striped as a double?
It would be.
Yeah, okay.
And we are not an enforcement agency. We can put the best measures out there and we can ensure that they will be followed.
Okay. Another question is, how wide was the street in the development? 33. So parking would be allowed on both sides? Okay. Is the school bus stop thought to be at the end of the road right there on Victory? Or will the school bus, do you think, be turning up the road to pick the kids up?
That would be determined by the school district.
Okay. And if I understood right, allowing parking on Victory has not yet been discussed? Or will that be denied or allowed?
For this subdivision?
Yes. Since it'll have a curb and gutter and sidewalk and all that good
It
stuff.
has not been discussed.
Okay.
Mr. Goldthorpe, generally on minor arterials, there's no parking on the street.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arnold?
Thank you. Just a follow-up question to Mr. Goldthorpe's, Commissioner Goldthorpe's concern. If the center lane did become a problem with people using it as a way to speed through to get to the turn pocket, don't we have the ability to put in some physical barriers that actually limit the size of the turn pocket and prevent that use? I know I've seen a couple go in downtown recently.
President Baker, Commissioners, yes, we do, and we would go out and study it. We would notify law enforcement and share our study with them as well, but we could modify it.
Commissioner Woods?
Just a couple of questions. What's the speed limit on Victory between Cloverdale and Eagle?
I think it's 40 miles per hour, Commissioners.
40 miles an hour? Okay. So to access the school, there's no way for anyone to access a public school without accessing Victory from the subdivision. There's no other way in, there's no other way out. Is that correct? Could someone get to a school without turning on to Victory here?
Yeah, President Baker, Commissioners, without turning here, through sidewalk, I guess I'm not following the question.
So I think it's self-explanatory. Savannah takes access off of Victory. There's one way in, there's one way out. So you have to be on Victory. So we've improved the sidewalk on the south side to Cloverdale. What's the consideration going west towards Eagle Road? Why no consideration for sidewalk connectivity to the west?
President Baker, Commissioners, I believe the closest school in that area would be west on Eagle Road, and it's quite some distance from this development. Pepper Ridge, or Pepper Mill, I believe, is to the north, and we do have sidewalk through the connectivity along Cloverdale Road that you can access that school site and that play area. I believe they have a large park there through the sidewalk, which this development is providing via the intersection.
So help me understand that a little bit. My concern is just pedestrian access to a school. So if the school's to the west, the mitigation with the sidewalk is to the east. So I'm trying to understand how does this subdivision gain pedestrian access to facilities to the west?
Do we have sidewalks currently to the west?
Yeah, President Baker, Commissioners, as you can see, those are still very much rural properties. We've not obtained the right-of-way to make those improvements through there. They would come with widening of Victory Road.
Okay. Follow-up question. So Victory Road is constructed as a 2-lane minor arterial. What year was that constructed? So
President Baker, Commissioners, I don't have that date.
Mr. Woods, I would assume it's a farm-to-market road on the mile section, just like all the other roads in that area, plus West Boise.
Right. So in terms of meeting our standards for a 2-lane minor arterial, that is somewhat context-specific. We have one in sort of a rural setting and one in a more urban setting. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this minor arterial as it sits today in the 2-lane configuration is more of a rural nature, is that correct?
Correct.
It's not really for an urban standard minor arterial at this point.
Not currently, and that is something we would address in the future.
Okay.
Commissioner Arnold?
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Just a couple of points of clarification. Just to make sure I understand exactly what's going on. The modifications that are proposed to Victory will actually improve safety on Victory going towards Cloverdale, correct?
President Baker, Commission, the improvements will improve the level of service. That is the level of comfort felt by the public. It does not improve safety. It doesn't.
Except that there are sidewalks that are being added.
Except for the sidewalks.
And the center turn lane.
Correct.
So those are safety improvements, correct?
They are.
And then my second question is for legal, since the discussion has now gone towards questions on Victory Road to the west of this site, would we have any ability to require this developer to put in off-site improvements such as adding sidewalks on Cloverdale going west? Or would that be overreaching?
Victory goes west.
On Victory going west? Would that be overreaching?
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, ACHD General Counsel, and Commissioner Arnold, any offsite improvements have to go through a constitutional analysis regarding takings. And we have determined, and also reviewing the case law, that many of the offsite improvements that aren't adjacent to the proposed development are considered illegal exactions, and we don't have the authority to do that. There are some offsite exactions that we can make a determination that are necessitated by the development, but I believe that the proximity of improvements on Cloverdale are just too far away, that they would probably result in an illegal exaction.
So, Madam President, just to clarify, and not to debate to the legal counsel here, but they do speak to the timing and a condition of approval that may say that the development is appropriate, but it may require the installation of those improvements, not by the developer, but those improvements need to be made in order to provide for safety. Again, this is a rural standard minor arterial, and so this is not, my line of questioning was not to require that of the developer, it's just to understand how it fits together and provides adequate safety.
Madam President, Commissioner Woods, absolutely. However, if that's a decision that the commission makes, that they need to have significant evidence in the record as to demonstrate that there is a safety concern that needs to be addressed.
Any other questions for staff or? Yeah, no, okay, so we have it before us. Is there a motion?
Yes. Madam President, Commissioners, I would make a motion that the request for approval, annexation, rezone, and the waiver be denied.
Based on?
Based on at least according to my way of thinking, the safety concerns that I have for the ingress and egress from the development, and the lack of, or the unknown design considerations that we have presently. And that's it.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Mr. Woods?
Point.
Commissioner Baker, thank you. Well, I want to make a few comments before I appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments. I think that to everybody that took the time to come down here tonight and to provide testimony, we want to thank you. We've certainly listened to you. We've read all the emails that have been provided, and we understand the pressures that growth is providing on the community. From my perspective, growth is not something that I look forward to every day when I wake up, but it's also not something that I can pretend is not going to happen, because it is happening. I think the challenge for the highway district in being the only countywide highway district in the country is that we do not have land use authority, and so that gets a little bit confusing to folks. It gets a little bit confusing to me, and I've sat on this commission for over 3.5 years now. So the legal basis for a denial, an approval or denial, really rests with the land use agency. But the land use agencies like to say that, well, we don't do transportation, and so we we leave that to the highway district. And so that gets, a little confusing. We have policies in place that try to guide us in terms of how we're going to expend our monies and provide a forecast of what roads we're going to improve. But when it comes down to from my perspective, the legal approval or denial of people's property rights, the highway district has to have a policy that'll withstand, legal muster. And so if we have a policy that says this is really too inconvenient for folks, the case law that I've looked at, and again, I'm practicing law as an engineer, so take that for what it's worth, but you have to have a basis for that, not just that it's uncomfortable. I mean, the interstate is uncomfortable, but that doesn't provide a basis for denial of land use applications. So it has to be context specific and site specific. And what I think we really need is for the 6 cities in Ada County and the county to work with the highway district to adopt a level of service standard in ordinance that's both in their ordinance and in ours, so that it can be applied legally. But as I look at this particular application, we have to take our policy and apply its context and what it means in terms of safety. I think that the applicant is proposing some improvements to mitigate the effects of safety issues on Victory. I have concerns that those improvements don't go far enough to accommodate pedestrian travel to the west, increased volume to the west, and this is a difficult issue. I don't know that anyone can be absolutely right or wrong. Does more volume mean it's less safe? You could argue that it increases the chances of something happening, but is that, roadway just unsafe, or are there just more chances for people to be on it, and people are people and we're gonna have accidents? I mean, that's truly a difficult question to answer. The challenge here, when we have land use that's transitioning from rural to urban, is how do we accommodate that from an infrastructure standpoint? We only have so many dollars. We are trying to make these improvements as best we can in an orderly fashion, but development applications don't always come in orderly fashion, so we have to make these decisions. I'm concerned that we have a rural 2-lane minor arterial to the west, and there's certainly going to be traffic increases to the west, and having a 2-lane minor arterial with limited pedestrian access, I think, is unsafe. So I think the development is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. I think it is consistent with the highway district's plan to widen Victory in Cloverdale. I think that a condition of approval needs to be that the development cannot proceed until pedestrian improvements are made on Victory to the west, and that roadway improvements be made on Victory to the west. That's not the obligation of the developer. It's just, for me, a condition on the timing of when of approval of the application. So that's my position. Thank you, Commissioner Baker.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have some comments. I agree with a substantial portion of what Commissioner Woods said. I have to say, though, that I don't think it's appropriate to delay a development and deny private property rights until improvements to Victory Road to the west are made. I think that's an unacceptable stance to take, to put a developer or any property owner in that position. These are not easy decisions for us to make, and I do appreciate that everyone came out tonight. We heard your concerns. I believe this developer has made proposals that do address and actually improve safety along the portion of Victory that it is reasonable for us to expect them to make safety improvements too. And that's in front of the property and to the east, to the intersection with Cloverdale. I think 28 units it's not going to add enough traffic going west to warrant delaying this development until improvements to the west are made. There are currently no sidewalks. If there were a short distance of sidewalks that could be put in to connect to an existing sidewalk system, that would be a different issue. But I'm not aware of any sidewalks on Victory to the west of this site that are anywhere close to this site. So it would be an unreasonable requirement to deny their property rights based upon that. As far as the safety concerns, or safety as a basis for denying the preliminary plat, I haven't seen any evidence in the record that would support that there is a safety problem here. And our legal counsel has advised that we have to have evidence of in the record as to what the safety problems are, and it's just not there. We all have opinions, but me sitting here, or anyone else sitting here and saying, well, I think it's unsafe, that's an opinion. That's not evidence as to what the safety is. So I don't think we have an adequate basis for denying the preliminary plat. Of course, the rezone, that's up to the city. We're not approving or denying that. So I will be voting against the motion.
Mr. Hans?
Madam President, I voted on safety issue originally, and I think that because in this area we have significant evidence in the record that this area and many areas on this side, as it gets filled up, do pose a significant safety risk. And it's rooted in the way development patterns have happened, permitted by the cities, with such profoundly poor connectivity, which forces people, and it's entirely car dependent, so onto these section line roads, which, as Commissioner Woods points out, is this a rural road. Victory goes all the way into Canyon County, and that is continuing to be used as an east-west corridor, much as Overland is, and the freeway. And there's a lot of evidence in the record, and I think there's extensive evidence that this lack of connectivity creates a extensive safety risk. What this says is that, well, then there has to be some safety improvements before we can start approving the city should be approving additional development, and I would agree with that because of that safety risk. Other parts of the community have much better connectivity. Other parts of the community have developed special planning ordinances that says this is how it's going to develop. This is how we're going to have extensive collector and local and arterial systems so we can disperse this. And then some of them even lay on top of that a transit system, although all over the county it's pretty weak. And they have pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. Hillsdale and Lake Hazel Middle School are fairly near here. Those kids should be walking and biking to school, but the only way a lot of them do it now is, if they do it, is on an arterial, which many parents probably feel is not safe. So because of the safety constraints, and I do believe there is sufficient evidence in the record to say that this is a public safety risk existing, and any more burden on Victory and Cloverdale makes that even more so.
Did you have a follow-up?
Well, I was going to ask Commissioner Hanson to specifically list all that safety evidence, but it's not there, so I think he probably would just continue to give us opinions, so I'll pass on asking that question.
Mr. Woods.
So I do think that it's an interesting and worthwhile discussion about safety. And I think what's interesting is the burden to prove that it's safe, or is it the burden to prove that it's unsafe? We start from a position of it being a safe, rural, minor arterial, and now that functionality is changing. And so under that changed functionality, is a 2-lane rural minor arterial safe or not? And is it safe for vehicles, and is it safe for pedestrians? Those are questions that hopefully don't need to be supported in the record by fatalities and accidents. Hopefully we have judgment that we can apply to determine whether or not something is safe or unsafe. I'm not suggesting that this rises to the level of denial. I think we need to have a condition of approval that speaks to this, and if there's ways to mitigate that in the future, then the development moves forward sooner. But I also think, in addition to that, speed of 40 miles an hour should be something that bare minimum is reduced to 35, but that speaks to safety as well.
So I am not going to support the motion. I believe that the developer has actually gone above and beyond what is normal requirement for a development, particularly one of this size. 28 units in the scheme of things is minimal. The developments across the street, the Pepper developments that have occurred for the last 35 years, all of the developments on Deschutes, on McCormick, I'm sure they travel on Victory Road. It's I think inappropriate to require the developer to go to the west for any kind of improvements, although they are going to El Rio. In actuality, the slower the road, the more congested the road, the safer the road. The level of service is an arbitrary number for comfort, but in reality, if you're going 5 miles an hour on a road, you're pretty safe. You go 60 miles an hour on a road, not as safe, and 80 miles on the freeway, again, not as safe. So I don't think that this development is going to increase or decrease the safety on the road. If it does add a little traffic, it's going to increase the safety because it will become more congested. It's just a fact of life. But it is inconvenient, and you get stuck in traffic, and it's irritating, but irritation is not unsafe. It's just irritation. This meets our level of service now. It does not need a waiver. It meets all of our policies. I don't see how we can deny this application based on what we've heard. If we do here, we'd have to deny every application in Ada County. I don't think that's realistic, and I don't think anybody's arguing that. So adding the pedestrian safety from this development all the way over to Cloverdale goes above and beyond, but I think that's appropriate. I think the center turn lane will also help with the capacity and to keep traffic moving in that particular area into the development to the north, onto El Rio. These will all have the ability to use this turn lane. And eventually it will get extended, because even though you see kind of broken up patterns of ownership, eventually some will develop, somebody will assemble them, they will develop bigger, and the connectivity will be increased. We don't have the luxury of saying, we're gonna buy up this property and put a collector in. I mean, that would be insane. So I'm not going to vote for the motion, and so I guess we'll have the vote now unless anybody has anything else to say. No? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No?
Nay.
Motion fails.
Madam President, I would move that we approve the Savannah Subdivision preliminary plat as recommended in the staff report.
I'll second that motion. Okay,
Discussion.
Mr. Woods?
Again, to come back to this, I think, and I appreciate the comments that you made, Madam President. I think the way I see it is that while this is a small parcel, this issue will play out all along Cloverdale, north and south, between, all along Victory, between Cloverdale and Eagle. And so I think it's important to raise the issue now and to be consistent. And I think part of what I'm striving at is to get that connection between the Highway District and the land use agencies when it comes to our decisions in the integrated 5-year work plan. We get input from the cities in the integrated 5-year work plan. If we don't have discipline, if we can't say we're gonna invest our limited resources here first, and until we fix these problems, we're not gonna do these things over here. We've got to create a paradigm shift. And that's what I'm driving at here. The expansion of Victory is not in the integrated 5-year work plan. It's in the theoretical down the road. It's just something that'll be done. And what I'm driving for is to have the land use agency understand the consequences of that and try to put in some conditions of approval that speed this up in time and address some of the issues that have been addressed here, which I think are relevant safety. I don't think they rise to the issue of denial of the application, but I think that there needs to be a condition of approval that speaks to sidewalk connectivity to the west and to commitment by the city to elevate the expansion of Victory in the integrated 5-year work plan. Well,
Mr. Woods, I don't think we can put a condition of approval on this 28 subdivision to hold it up for connectivity to the west regarding sidewalks. However, what we can do is put a recommendation to the city of Boise in our discussion with them, and when we forward this application to them, that they do look at this area for their 5-year work plan, come up with a listing and where they think it should be on their list.
And Madam Chair, I would amend my motion to add that recommendation when this is submitted to the city of Boise.
And I'll second that, and of course, the staff member can also discuss that with his other staff members and the planning and zoning when it rises to that level.
Say that again. Can you just, I think
Can you repeat the?
Me? Yes,
Well,
I was adding your conditions.
Okay, well, no,
Your
that
recommendation.
just that we put in our recommendation to the city of Boise on the annex and rezone, that they look at this area within the context of adding some of these segments to their 5-year work plan list, and, you know, where do they rise on that? How important is it to the city of Boise?
Yeah, I think.
And it could be, it might even just be the sidewalk gets completed from here to Eagle Road, rather than widening to 5 lanes. But if they don't even have it on their radar, on their list. I'm expressing agreement with that. That needs to be clearly worded as a concern that the Highway District does not, we do sidewalks, there is no connectivity, there is no plan to add sidewalk connectivity to the west. That limits pedestrian accessibility, whether you want to call it safety or accessibility, I'll leave that to the record, but that's a concern. It's also concern about, you know, we got from the city of Boise a recommendation in the integrated 5-year work plan for 593 sidewalk sections, which we don't have the ability to address. But this is not going to make that ability to address those 593 sections any easier. And this was not one of them here on Victory. So that's an issue, as well as understanding that approval of, even though it's consistent with the comp plan,
is not addressing the timing of the aggregation of approvals out here. I think we were given pretty good evidence about how many applications, how many vehicle trips. I mean, in excess of 6,000 vehicle trips per day are being aggregated on a minor rural arterial that's going to remain that way for a long time. I think that's, while it may not be evidence of safety, it's evidence of increased chances of risk, and that needs to be addressed.
Does the staff understand what we're discussing here and can craft an appropriate amendment to the staff report as it's forwarded on to the city of Boise?
President Baker, Commissioner.
Clarification?
Yes, I do. I think I
Okay, great, thank you.
understand.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Would it be appropriate, because of the past discussion that we've already had concerning the center lane, the design, and the left turn on Cloverdale, to condition the approval with the right in, right out only into the development?
I don't think at this time that's,
I don't think that's gonna.
I mean, we usually do that for commercial, but not for residential.
Defeat the intent of the center turn lane.
Yeah, it would defeat the intent of the center turn lane.
Well, it would appear to me that would only need to be perhaps 30 feet long, and they've got almost 900 feet over to it already.
I think that would be a function of engineering as we go along and it's developed to see. I don't think we want to put that condition on it right now. Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion before us is to approve the preliminary plat and then send the recommendation on to the city for the annexation and rezone. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Again, thank you all for coming. We appreciate everyone who came and testified. This concludes our hearing, unless there's someone who wishes to address the commission on any topic other than what we just did. Okay, come on up. And if you all would kind of exit quietly. So,
I feel a little lackluster here.
yeah, if
You've been very patient waiting all
If you guys
evening.
could take your conversation outside the room, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Christy Mickak. I live at 4721 North Eagle Point Place in Star, Idaho.
Just a second. Could you all please, I don't have the gavel here. If you all could just please quietly exit the room. They're not listening. Okay, let's start again.
Maybe we can hear you now.
Yes.
I think so.
And to think I was a cheerleader, everybody could never mind. Okay, President Baker, council members, thank you very much for hearing me. My name is Christy Mickak. I live at 4721 North Eagle Point Place in Star, Idaho. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association for Hillsdale Estates.
Hillsdale? Okay.
Hillsdale Estates.
We're gonna try to quiet them down, so speak a little louder.
Oh, sorry, okay.
That's okay.
All right. I have been working with John Wasson for the past 3 years.
And he's sitting over there.
Yes, he is. Our concern is our little subdivision of 314 homes is now going to be sectioned off and annexed into the city of Star with 3,000 new homes. With that being said, there are two ways in and out of Hillsdale. One is off of Deep Canyon and Highway 16. The other,
Steve is saying, is this gonna come before us so we can't hear it?
Madam President, Commissioners, the application has not come to the Highway District. It will be coming to the Highway District. Again, it'll be a land use application. It'll be quasi judicial. And we're not allowed to take any testimony outside those proceedings. So this is premature.
all I'm asking for is speed humps on Deep Canyon.
Okay.
I just
Okay.
wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why I'm asking for
Well,
speed
that
humps.
annexation has not been approved yet, so.
Oh, and I hope it doesn't. All right. So-
Okay, speed humps.
Speed humps, yes. I have a section of Deep Canyon that is, how many feet, John? 1,500? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pull you into this. Don was sick.
Well, I would
We're good.
Okay.
Close enough.
encourage you to
fee-
work-
okay.
Encourage you to work with John. There's other traffic calming measures too. Speed humps are often many people think, oh, that's the only solution, but there may
Well-
be some other, including
Well-
bulb outs and shreds and all kinds, and John knows.
I agree with you, and like I said, I've been working with John for the past 3 years. I've gone through everything that I need to do. I've got all the signatures, everything's been approved. The one thing that does not work is that we're not a pass-through.
So if you're not a pass-through, who's creating the traffic that needs to be mitigated?
Our own neighbors, probably.
Yes, and with the impending, which is a pie in the sky evidently, but not from what I heard last night, planning and zoning, that Canada is going to be the only arterial road that they're going to be getting all of their functions up through water, sewer, electric, everything is going to go up Canada, and that's our only arterial exit out of Hillsdale on the west side. On the east side, we have Deep Canyon going on to Highway 16. We're above Blessinger. I don't know if you're familiar with where Hillsdale is, but we're before the hill going over into Emmett.
Okay.
We are a rural area. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have curbing. We don't have any of that. We do have a lot of speedsters. We do have kids riding bikes. We do have people walking, dogs, so on and so forth. With the impending situation, we're trying to be proactive rather than reactive. We're losing lots of pets now with the new homes that are being built on some of the lots that have now been sold. We have a lot of contractors up there coming in and out that don't obey our 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I don't want to see one of our kids getting hurt. We have had the speed safety checked on 3 of our streets, and Deep Canyon does meet all the criteria, except it is not a pass-through because we are above New Hope and Blessinger and all of that. So it will be a pass-through here shortly.
We have speed bumps in my neighborhood, and we're not a pass-through. People speed in their own neighborhood, yeah.
But it's so pretty out there, and people want to see how great it is to go around the curves and up and down the hills and doing 55 and a 25. We've had the police out there. I've got reports after reports after reports of incidences that have happened. I've had a committee put together with this. We've been working on this. We've done everything that we need to do to get these humps.
So
Please. I'm asking you, I'm putting a motion to you. Can you please approve our speed humps for Deep Canyon for Hillsdale Estates?
Well, we can't do anything right now because it's not on the agenda, but we
When I
can-
called Stacy,
Well, it's public communications for
Oh,
you to
I
tell
see.
us about the
Oh, I
issue, but
see.
we
Okay.
can't say yes or no.
oh,
yet.
okay. I don't know the process. I'm still new to this. I'm sorry.
Doing fine?
Okay, I'm really nervous.
Made us aware, and we will get a report from John and try to work out a conclusion.
Okay,
Traffic calming.
please.
Okay,
All right, and it's, our neighbors want it. All right.
okay.
Good.
Thank you. And I don't think anyone else, is anyone else here to? Okay, then, meeting adjourned. So
I
John
think I
will-
need a drink.
I think I need one too.
I'm so